Hello and welcome to Synchronicity Talk Radio for your mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Marie Benard, and you are listening to CITR 101.9 FM in Vancouver, broadcasting from unceded Musqueam territory on the University of British Columbia campus. And I'm so happy to be with you today. Today we're going to be speaking with COURTNEY CARNRITE. She is the founder of Vivid Holistics, which is a local company. We'll find out all about it in just a minute. But the latest thing, as you know, if you're a regular listener, is that I want to start the show with an intention or a short meditation. So if you are in a place where it's safe to do so, feel free to close your eyes and just take a nice, slow, deep breath down into your diaphragm, down into your belly, filling your lungs up. And just imagine as you're breathing in that you're breathing love into your body. Focus on your heart. Focus on your heart, filling your heart up with that love from the universe, that God energy, whatever it is to you. And just noticing how it makes you feel when you focus that love into your heart. And as you're breathing in now, feel that love expanding within your body. Feel it pouring into every cell of your body and waking up all of those loving, juicy energies. Feel it energizing you for the day and for the rest of the week. And now take one more breath and feel that love expanding beyond the limits of your body, out into the world, connecting with others around you. And may we just have the intention of having a beautiful conversation today, holding a loving space, whether you're listening live or on the podcast, and just loving intentions in our heart for a wonderful week where we're able to serve the world with the special gifts that we have that come from our heart. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. I realized as I opened my eyes, I wasn't even talking into the mic. I'd completely shifted my body. All right. Well, we are here today with COURTNEY CARNRITE. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us. Okay. So you are from vividholistics.com and you do so many things.
I do so many things.
Doula, and maybe you can go over the list of all the things that you do.
It's become a bit refined. That was a few years ago when I developed the business concept. Now it's a little bit more herbalist, intuitive. I'm starting to make herbal products as well, which isn't on the website yet. So the doula and the yoga definitely influences me, and I have those skills and I can communicate about them and support people like that. And definitely yoga comes in as an influence in terms of how to support people in their tools of healing and moving forward in their life. And with the kind of what I do in the tarot room, there's mediumship and tarot card reading and a lot about closure, endings for new beginnings, things like that. And so that's when yoga techniques often come in terms of supporting people to know what to do in order to move forward for themselves.
So when you say yoga techniques, you're not just talking about the stretching and all of that. What else is there? I've only ever done the stretching
really?
aspect.
Yeah, definitely. That's most common in North America by far. But there's also breath work. There's kind of a moral compass that goes along with the kind of spiritual aspects of yoga. Things like asteya, which is don't steal, but it's don't steal time. Don't steal like of other people. Pay attention to when they're available and when they're not, so that it's just there's more flow. Yeah, so there's like a lot of aspects, but usually it's more like the chakras, Kundalini energy, moving, definitely stretching in order to help people release things that they maybe aren't consciously aware of that's still affecting their lives, but it moves, maybe the body's holding it, and so the movement helps to like, basically I see very visually, I'll see images like popping off of memories and experiences, but for other people, their bodies are just, usually our bodies hold things for us. They help us kind of survive and exist, and moving helps release things that maybe we hold on to and don't realize. Yeah.
That's why if you go to yoga, sometimes people will cry in yoga because it's just releasing. I've had that experience before. I need to do more yoga. I've got to find like a convenient yoga location because it's so important. Yeah.
Sure, and if you're processing tons of emotions and you're comfortable, stretching at home can be wonderful. Even like my yoga online is really great if you just want a little guidance through and privacy.
And they're local too, right? They're a Vancouver company.
I don't know that.
I think so.
Wow, that's great.
I think they are. I could be wrong, but yeah.
They have a lot of local people on there, so.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah.
All right. Well, we are speaking with Courtney Carnrite from vividholistics.com. And yeah, I wanted to have you on the show because you're local, and your mentor teacher, Luz, has been on this show before.
Right. Yeah.
So I met her through a business course at Embers, which is a local company. And she's just so great. And so we stayed in touch, and then she got in touch with me because you're looking at doing your own show. So, yeah, if you're interested in hearing more about whatever Courtney's going to be up to next, you can go to her website, vividholistics.com, and I don't know when that'll happen, but you can fill people in.
Don't go there yet.
Yeah. I'm sure. Do you have a way to get an email list on there?
Yeah.
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 So people can sign up for your newsletter, and then they can be filled in on the latest.
Everything's about to change there. I'm just working with someone right now, and I think vividholistics.com will become a website for products more than services. And then I'll create COURTNEYCARNRITE.com, because I notice with the professional services, it's more of an intimate relationship, and Courtney is who they know. They don't, but the whole thing is kind of an entity of its own.
Cool.
Vivid Holistics,
So as I was looking at your site, even though it's going to change, there's so many things that you have done. And so I'm really curious to know about your journey and how you got to where you are today. And you touched on it before, but...
Yeah, so what's become the strongest things in terms of my practice is the intuitive arts and herbalism. So herbalism kind of caught me in a way. I lived in New York City, and I had no health care because I was illegal. Don't tell anyone. And so I went to this herbalist because I was suffering a lot with the throat and mouth, an ear infection, actually, kind of a head cold, but extreme pain. And I went, and this French woman who refused to tell me what was in the blend formulated something on the spot and gave me a brown paper bag and told me to brew it up. It was just a steep, like 15 minutes in hot water, an infusion actually, and drink it 3 or 4 times a day. And I did. And by the next day, the pain had reduced, I would say like probably 80%. I could go back to work. It was amazing. I did an ear oil too. If anyone's had herbal ear oils, they're phenomenal. They're really simple and good. And that started me just in a small program at a place called Open Space, I think it was. It was just an amazing little spot in New York that had many alternative programs and for learning. So, teaching, lessons, etc. And through there, I met a girl named Irina who was convinced I should come and work at a place called Flower Power Herbs and Roots. And she would call me up every time they had an opening. And for about 1.5 years, I was just like, nope. I can't commit. Nope. And then I finally decided I was going to commit. And then I got on board. And actually, this is amazing. Lata Kennedy is the woman who runs the store. And I didn't believe it, but Irina was like, you bring in your astrology chart, your birth chart. And I was like, what? So I did, but I also brought in my resume because I couldn't believe it. And yeah, so I got hired right then and there. And then the herbs used to, when someone would come to the counter, because it was an apprenticeship program, but you're really left on your own. So like she was available for guidance, but it was really like you kind of just had to show up with kind of research and intuition, all that connection. So someone would maybe be at the counter facing me, but I could see all the herb jars to my left. And sometimes it was like the jar would just jump off the shelf and come forward. Wow. It would just be like hovering. And so I'd kind of start to realize like this herb wants to be with this person. So I'd kind of discreetly look up the herb and be like, so do you have any of these issues? Does this resonate with you? And they'd be like, yeah. It was like almost never failed.
We're waving at UBC students that are
the new
coming
people.
in. Yeah, they're all the freshmen arriving. It's so cute to see them.
Like they're taking a little selfie.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's funny. Yeah, so that was kind of how that began. Yeah.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that you already were intuitively sensing, just like the herbs were almost speaking or showing you the way.
That's very much how it was. I ended up, and I come from a background of being told that within Western medicine, that I was labeled as a paranoid schizophrenic when I was 20, like right near my 20th birthday. So I had some real challenging times trying to deal with like, oh, I'm seeing this. Oh my gosh, okay. And I would just roll with it then because I could understand that the people and the plants go together. But one time I was sitting in Central Park on my own. I was having a little lunch for myself and there's this plant like waving just off like maybe 5 meters away, like la la la. And they're like, take me home. And I was like, no, I gotta go. I got up and left because I was really freaked out because I'd had this, it's a real like extreme, it's like a pendulum experience, of you're crazy, you're never going to be okay, to, you know what, we're still talking to you, we're still telling you things, and just really extreme differences. And so I got up and left, but I remembered, I looked at it, and I went to the shop, and I realized I was already taking it as a flower essence and also as a herbal remedy for some womb stuff that was going on with me. So it was fully integrated into my life, but then it was like, we love you, you'll love us, take us home. And yeah, I kind of panicked.
Wow.
Yeah, really amazing experiences. I feel so blessed, actually.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, I mentioned before this show that my mom had schizophrenia as well. And that's one of the things for me that with this spiritual work, like I've kind of the show started out as spirituality, and then I got really disillusioned with that whole business, that industry.
Yeah.
And so I kind of was like, okay, I'm just going to mostly focus on self-help, what's scientifically proven, psychology, all that kind of thing. And one of the things that I've noticed throughout this journey of the last 8 years or so hosting the show is I would speak with people who would have visions or hear things. And on the one hand, I wanted to develop my intuition more. And on the other hand, knowing about my mother's history and knowing that it is partly genetic, there was that fear of like, well, I don't actually want that experience because what would that mean? What might that be a sign of? So I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more about that journey that you've had.
Well, this might be strangely encouraging, but there's this fellow, Stephen Herod Booner, and he's a great herbalist and I find some of the older herbalists are really moving to like esoteric, spiritual, like Terry Willard, really well-known person in this community. He's really always talking about kind of metaphysical stuff now. Herbs are of the earth. They're moving beyond in a way. And he says that, Stephen Booner, he says that he thinks the schizophrenics are the shamans of our culture. They are just misread, misdiagnosed. And also we just don't have the framework for holding space for that. And we don't have the people who have grown with it and who can help facilitate someone in kind of learning what to do with it and how to be stable and okay both in ordinary reality and non-ordinary reality. So ordinary reality would be everything third dimension that we can feel, see, hear, touch, like that's real. And so what I think happened to me is I had something that would be defined as an initiation or initiatory experience. And as a kind of classic shamanic growth thing, you could define it as a dark night of the soul, dismemberment. And the tarot would be like the tower, even far beyond the death card, with death is like this internal transformation. The tower is like everything kind of changes in your life. And so ultimately, my sense of things is all my boundaries were down and my chakras were far too wide open. And it kind of becomes a safe place because you're not alone. Okay, so it becomes like almost easier to be on the earth sometimes, especially when you start to realize kind of the way the earth is and how people hurt each other and stuff like this. Well, at least that was my experience. It became a bit of a safe place, but then I started to realize I was not living, I was not participating, and I was not functioning. And so I definitely got the help of Western medicine to help me be in my body. But I was still having experiences once I started taking medication. I just would never tell anyone because I didn't want to end up in a hospital again. So, and you know, when this happened to me, I think it was like 95, 96. There was no intense treatments. There was basically medication. And they bounced around medication until one kind of fit, and then off you go. And so when I was 26, I had already moved to New York. I tried in Nelson, actually, to find a good psychiatrist who would work with me, and it just didn't happen. So I went to New York, and I started working with someone who, me and my friends said, believed in magic. And I did not tell her. She told me she thought I was spontaneously journeying, and I should get this quite famous woman, Sandra Ingerman's book called Beginner's Guide to Journeying, which is an amazing book, yeah. And also she explained to me that you could negotiate with spirit. And basically I would literally be like, I cannot walk around an open vessel. I cannot walk around knowing this about that person or seeing all this stuff. I need to be able to exist. Like on the material plane, we need house and food and we need money basically to kind of accommodate those things for the most part. Maybe not everyone, but at that stage I certainly did. I don't have skills beyond that really. And yeah, so that's how. Now she would always say to me, this is Julie Spooner, she lives in Brooklyn, New York now, but my psychologist, she would always say to me that maybe not everyone would be like this, but it's been a decade or over that since then. And, you know, Stephen Booner just started to talk about this, to my knowledge, about 2 or 3 years ago in terms of that philosophy of the schizophrenics being the shamans. But either way, it's like broken down, wide open, no boundaries, like zero boundaries. And there's often like a history of trauma. So I think people learn how to leave their bodies at a young age. So they're like I had the quote unquote imaginary friend. And I think we basically just went off together while, you know, my body and kind of my mind were experiencing maybe something else, but my spirit could kind of go away and have different experiences. And yeah.
Well, we are speaking right now with Courtney Carnrite, and you can find her at vividholistics.com for the moment. That's going to change soon, but you can also sign up for her mailing list there because everything's going to be changing. And thank you so much for your sharing of your experiences. And I'm wondering, I had to go to a break, so I'm wondering if there's anything you'd like to add on that train of
I guess
conversation?
just from the way it began with you being like, I don't know if I'd ever want to go there. It's kind of, there are people like who really help hold space. Like I studied with Angela Prider, who's local, just to help me understand what my experiences are. And she is really about ritual and structure and kind of like a container for everything so that the skills are developed slowly, safely, and you've got a mentor and a practitioner to kind of communicate with and talk to. So it's really up to you. Like the experience I had was so extreme and so uncontained, but there was the history of trauma, there was drugs, like there was a lot going on to kind of like facilitate this. Because if we look at Western science and chemistry, there's definitely a chemical thing happening in my brain. I don't think we can disassociate the two. If anything, understanding them both might be the ideal situation. Yeah.
I'm curious if you're willing to talk about it. What the experience was with Western medication. And first of all, I want to make it really clear we're not providing any medical advice or psychiatric advice. Please see a licensed professional for that. But I notice, like with my mother and other people that I know who are on a lot of different medications, that there are a lot of side effects, like things where people may rock back and forth, the Parkinsonian type of symptoms. And so it can really be a barrier for a lot of people just to have to stay stable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how was that experience for you taking those medications?
Well, it was kind of horrible. The first one, I reacted. So typically with the antipsychotics, they give you a side effect medication for exactly what you're talking about, kind of repetitive motion. Very often it would lead to like something that never got contained again, like tongue moving and jaw moving and weird, uncomfortable things. I was really young. So I was 20. And then, so initially I was medicated and with no side effect medication. So I was like, I was like a piece of wood. I couldn't really move.
Wow.
Yeah. It took me like an hour or two to get dressed. Like it was a horrible, terrifying, sad experience to the point I had a home nurse and she came in one day and I was like, this is not going to continue. I cannot live like this. Like my brain was active, but my body was like stuck. It was very weird. And so she, I think, realized what I was saying, because I was really saying like, if this doesn't change, like I'm not staying, because I couldn't handle it as a person, as a human. And so she just got on board. She got me an appointment with a psychiatrist. I went in like within a couple of weeks and BCA got on board. 2 weeks later, I met the psychiatrist. So ridiculous. But it was fast considering what the situation had been. And he put me on something else that took us quite a while to realize I was allergic to.
Wow.
Yeah. So the way that was manifesting was, oh, this is so sad. But I was itchy. I was really itchy, and we kept thinking the whole house had scabies. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was just not true. I was just allergic to something that we couldn't figure out. And so finally that got figured out, maybe after 8 months or a year or something. But life was getting back to normal. I was able to travel a little bit again. I had motion, like I could laugh normally. My function was better. So then I got switched to something that at that time was really progressive, olanzapine. It cost like a huge fortune because they hadn't created the
generic.
Yeah,
kind.
thank you. Yeah. And so I was on that for quite a while, but so that one stabilized me, and I was able to get a job, and I was able to have a life. Like I had a partner, I had a dog, we had a house, like just normal things happened again. And then I moved to New York, and I just started tapering on my own. And I'd had experiences in Canada, kind of what I would say psychic experiences, but I just never really thought about it. And if they were quite extreme, I wouldn't tell anyone. Yeah. So I went to New York City, and I started to realize I needed to deal with some trauma from my past, childhood stuff. And it just like, once I made the commitment, everything just moved so quickly. I got in with the woman I mentioned who believes in magic, and she identified that she's the one who suggested I go off the medication, not me, even though that's what I was trying to do when I lived in Nelson. And so I was like, well, I'm already at like half mast anyways. Like I only take about half of what I should. And we just did it, and we monitored me, and we did it over, I don't know, maybe like I was in therapy with her for about 2 years, but we actually took me off the meds over maybe 6 months, and then I was fine. I actually met a psychiatrist in the raw food, like chocolate toga party places. And yeah, seriously. And it's like all the Burning Man type people, but from way back.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it was a great time. I had a great time in New York for sure. And he was just like, give it a year, you'll be back. And I was like, oh, I wish I could find that person today. But I was like, no. And then I also didn't tell people who I thought would have a lot of fear energy. I only told people who I thought could genuinely support me, which was like one person.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the second person to find out was the person who helped me make sure I was medicated, but she knew I was okay. And so then it progressed to just kind of being more open about it. But all those things became something that I would practice. I told Spirit I would spend time journeying and kind of participating and actively connecting and learning about what was happening to me, so that I, in theory, was more like an open vessel. If Spirit, my word is Spirit that I typically use. You could say kind of creator, the universe, whatever you want to say. But if I feel like when it sees or it finds like a life that will respond to it and listen and work with it, it will communicate more and more. So when the blocks are up, the connection is less, but you also just don't kind of move through the world as easily as you could, I think is the thing to say. But if you haven't figured out your kind of container, and you don't have like good auric walls, and your chakras aren't, supported, at least. They don't have to be like perfect. People aren't perfect. But there's, kind of this structure, learning how to ground, like what a skill. Learning how to channel energy that isn't holding kind of entities, maybe. Learning who your healing guides are, who your power animal is, the beings that will support you kind of in this life, but that maybe don't physically exist. Yeah, this is where like the shamanic stuff really starts to take hold, because I had to figure out how to exist on the planet and be okay, and part of it was embracing those aspects of myself.
Thank you for sharing that. As you were talking, I just felt the pain of like all of the people out there who are suffering with schizophrenia, like my mother, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just, she was extremely Catholic, and because of the paranoia and all of that, and she had schizoaffective, so there was a mood disorder along with that, is my basic understanding of that. And so it was very painful. I mean, she was convinced she was going to hell.
Right.
Because of, things that she said when she was having an episode in her youth, and me ending up in foster care. Like, she was just convinced that she was an evil, horrible person. And she was like
lovely,
an angel,
Mm-hmm.
And I only wish I knew her more at that, like, because it was only as I was becoming an adult that I could start to see that in her, and then she passed away. So I'm just feeling that pain for all of those people who are struggling. And at the same time, I feel like that's almost, no matter what our if there's a diagnosis, or if someone comes from like a different type of family, or like, we all have this experience where we have to find our own path, and we have our gifts are often our greatest challenges as well.
Yeah.
So
The blessing and the curse kind of thing.
yeah, like as people who are sensitive or empathetic, a lot of times we lack boundaries and don't know how to say no. Or people who may have visions, and that could be, you know, like you said, without a container, it's just like, oh my gosh, terrifying, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if you have anything you want to say about that.
I don't know. I'm sorry, like, for that sadness and that loss, especially right when maybe you could have butted into something deeper and, you know, with your mother. Yeah,
It's part of, you know,
yeah,
life happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In terms of that, the only person I feel like I see doing a lot is the only person I can relate even slightly to in terms of trying to support people who are having these experiences is the local guy, Gabor Mate, who's using ayahuasca to treat addictions. And I feel like there's some sort of connection there because I don't know, it's just I haven't really talked to him about it or anything. We've talked about kind of codependency stuff, but not that. In terms of it, though, like people can't just start walking off and going off their medications. Like I swear it would be we'd have to like have a really big structure. I think there'd probably need to be a filtering program to see like, and even a trial and error process of can everybody kind of move to this? And it takes so much commitment. Like I was doing flower essences and herbal medicine, and I was working with other practitioners, and I was doing yoga. And like for me, like I took my health on. I took myself on in a way that I don't know if everyone can commit to. So I was very scared of what you're talking about. It's tardive dyskinesia or something
something
like this. Yeah, the uncontrolled motion
movement. And
yeah.
all that. Yeah.
So that was really fearful for me. But then I also had the flip side awareness that I was having experiences either way. So at some point it was like, can I contain this a bit more? But it was a huge commitment, and people couldn't, like, you couldn't just be like, all right, cool, let's make this happen. You know, it really big. I've thought about trying to create structured programs to help people through it, or at least take people who are having experiences and maybe refuse to medicate, or maybe the medication doesn't really work, and trying to get them like closer to finding stability by acknowledging this other reality or different kind of paradigm of what could be happening to them. But it does seem like a very overwhelming task, and I feel like it would take a team to kind of realize. Yeah.
Have you heard of WRAP, Wellness Recovery Action Plan?
No, I don't think so.
It is something, I think it's Mary Ellen Copeland. She's a Copeland Center.
Okay.
And it was developed for people with mental health challenges who had been hospitalized. And there's all these steps towards wellness, and it's like a support group and a teaching, and you basically plan out your wellness recovery action plan, the things that you need to do to take care of yourself, whether that's medication or yoga or all of those things. And nobody tells you in the group, like, you're not allowed to give advice. You can just say, well, what's worked for me is this. And so people kind of share ideas in an open way.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she was discovering, the woman who developed this program, was she did her PhD research on the people who had these hospitalizations and recovered and ended up having like sustainable long-term wellness. And she noticed some of the traits that they had, things like hope for the future and being able to build, I don't remember the specific tips, but it's basically about building resilience and having hope and connecting with supports and really advocating for oneself and finding people who are willing to help. And then, of course, having, there's a plan of if other people in my support circle can see that I'm not taking proper care of myself, at what point do you step in? What point might there need to be hospitalization or something like that. So it's a whole program, and it's changing lives. I mean, people are becoming weller and weller for longer periods, and they're now using RAP in the workplace and for other things that are outside the mental health, mental illness community. And I mean, and just, we were talking before the show how back when my mom was diagnosed with schizophrenia back in, I don't know, the 50s or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, there were shock treatments and all of those things. And it was really, I mean,
it's aggressive.
The difference in, and mental health treatment is far from perfect at this point, but it's night and day.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like a horror movie back then. So I don't know what my point is, but just that things are moving in direction.
They've progressed so far.
Yeah. And there's the whole community of peer support people who are helping each other. And it seems like, at least here in BC, that the mental health doctors and Western medicine are actually starting to see the benefits of these more, you know, mindfulness based and not just prescribing all the time.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think that's happening with physiological kind of, well, I guess it's all physiological, but, you know, other conditions also, not just of the mind, but of the body too. Yeah. But that's great. That's so progressive. Things are moving. Is that program here?
Yeah. The woman, I interviewed the woman who brought it here to Vancouver, Jen Cusick.
Okay.
She lives in Abbotsford, but she brought RAP to Vancouver and to BC.
Okay.
And because she saw what was happening and how it was so helpful and got passionate about it.
That's wonderful.
And brought it here, because that's really how, I mean, these things 20 years ago, these things didn't exist. And the kinds of therapy, like the mindfulness therapy that I've been through for my own, like, trauma symptoms and depression and all of that, have completely changed my life. Whereas I was, and I'm not saying go off medication, I'm not giving advice.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But I went on medication, and the medication that worked, I was completely numb and had no emotion. I couldn't cry to save my life. I just was completely flat. And then the other medications that I was on made me so much worse. It was the worst depression.
Really?
ever.
Okay, so it flipped the situation.
Yeah. And so, and I never, like, I would go on all these medications and nothing was helping me to build, you know, until I found the right therapy and a therapist who could kind of help me focus on, okay, let's build skills, let's build life skills, let's build some kind of structure and focus, instead of, I'd go into therapy where, you know, I'd be having a great day and everything would be great. And then 3 weeks later, I'd be back down low again. And then I'd be great and I'd think everything was okay. And it just went up and down and up and down. And there was no forward progression. Yeah, it was just the regular ups and downs of the whims of my brain chemistry, right?
Yeah.
So it's just, I mean, the fact that this stuff is changing little by little is so exciting, because the more that people hear about it and the more people are empowered.
Do you think it was simply your brain chemistry, or do you think part of it was just like having to process deep emotions, maybe wounds, like things that needed to be attended to?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, everything that we do affects our brain chemistry. The stuff that we eat, the thoughts that we think, our hormones, the weather, like, it all affects us, right? I think that part of it was brain chemistry. A lot of it was trauma.
Okay.
And a lot of it was just not having the skills or anyone who believed in me. Like, I didn't have life skills. I didn't have, like,
kind of the parenting. And
I didn't have the parenting. I grew up with people verbally abusing me and all many different types of abuse, to the point where it was like, well, that was normal, right? And if someone, you know, if someone wasn't hitting me, I didn't see it as abuse, because it was like, well, of course I'm a piece of crap, because I've been told for the last 20 years it must be true.
Aww.
Right? Yeah. So I think, and a lot of people, whether they have any kind of diagnosis or not, who've come from that kind of background, that's just their view of the world, is like, people are bad, they can't be trusted, I can't trust my intuition because, you know, I'm a loser or whatever we're conditioned to believe because
or someone's told you you're wrong and it's not true.
Yeah, because
it doesn't exist. Yeah.
Yeah, because as kids, we kind of know, well, no, I know what I'm doing. I got this. And then over time, the adults and the media and whatever that our influence is reminds us of how wrong we are, reminds us of how that's not safe. Don't take risks. Don't follow your heart. You got to go to university to be an accountant if you want to make, you know,
successful.
Yeah. What success is, what it means to, you know, and yeah.
It's interesting you said just about kids. They're like, I got this. I live with my boyfriend and his son he really seems to know what he wants and how he feels, but he also is living with people who are in much more control of his life and people who care about him and love him and want him to be safe and happy and well. But it's quite sometimes I think there's an inner conflict going on based on like that innate desire of being and doing and just being independent and free versus like just everything about society, whether it's like, I don't know, you got to brush your teeth kind of thing. You know, people have to do those little basic things, but it can kind of be a container that's really challenging. Yeah. And even though it's not like what you're talking about at all, it still is a subtle stifling in a way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've had Dr. Shefali Sabari. She's the author of The Conscious Parent. She's been on the show a couple times.
Yeah.
And she's creating, not alone, but there's this whole movement now of conscious parenting where, of course, as a parent, it's the job of the parent to provide enough structure and enough life skills.
Yes.
While at the same time
supporting the freedom and the interests in the individual. Yeah.
And it's a balance, and it's not, I mean, I think perfectionism is one of the biggest roadblocks to anything because in my road to recovery or whatever you want to call it, you know, perfectionism and thinking, oh, I'm not where I want to be. And now as I'm growing and the older I get, the more experience I get, I'm kind of thinking, well, that level that I wanted to be at before isn't even
part of your world
on my radar. Yeah, because it used to be what I thought life was supposed to be like was that it was easy. It wasn't hard. You know, I was like, well, I have to have the $100,000 a year and the house and the husband who all of these things that you see on TV as the perfect life. Yeah. And nothing can ever go wrong because if you feel sad or angry or whatever, then that means you're a failure or I'm, you know.
Yeah, there was really no space for that, for sure, growing up. Like, yeah, it was always kind of like, you're bad if you feel those ways. Yeah. You know, like something's wrong with you, go away, leave me alone.
Don't cry, don't talk back, don't stand up for yourself. And it's like when you tell a kid, don't stand up for yourself, don't sass me or whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, what happens when that little girl is at a party and some boy is trying to touch her and she doesn't want that? Or a boy or whatever. Yeah. You know, like we learn to not speak up. We learn to be nice and polite. And then what happens? People take advantage of that because we don't know how to say no.
Yeah. I'm a bit different than you in the sense that I basically defended myself from the moment I came out of the womb, basically, which was a traumatic experience, I think, for both my mom and I. But in the end, it was just like, whenever she tried to guide me, I was like, no. But I wasn't in the same situation where I was being moved and other people were trying to care for me. This was one person who was there all the time who we just weren't always in conflict. So I was very good at, you know, pushing people away because I didn't want what you're talking about, the guidance and the structure and the not being seen. I think is part of what's happening there is like there's these other motivations from the adults and the children maybe just aren't always seen. Yeah. You know, like, who are you really? What are your interests? What do you want to do? You know? But I think that's probably changed a lot. I think our generation is having children and treating them so much differently.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Yes. I have I'm an auntie to lots of different little children of different ages. And I feel like there's a lot of different approaches going on, a lot more respect, a lot more appreciation, a lot more attention to what the kids want and like and choose. Yeah.
There was actually, I saw a news article, I think it's this year now, this starting, I guess, tomorrow. They're going to be doing school differently here in BC.
Really?
Where it's going to be more self-paced and more, I don't know what structures they're going to have in place to support the teachers, because it's like, oh, we don't have a curriculum for this, so you're just going to have to figure it out. So we'll see how that goes. But the fact that the education system is even open to that, I feel like is this huge step in the right direction, because prior to that, people would have to go to private schools to have that kind of education.
Oh.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. It's, again, like the perfection, people will when I think, oh, well, I don't see how, like my attitude used to be that this is what I would be ideal.
Okay.
But because I don't see how to get there, well, I'm not going to try it because I don't know the road, right?
Absolutely. Or were you the type of person who, if you weren't perfect at something right away or good at it, you just didn't have, if I didn't have a natural aptitude, I would just refuse. I wouldn't even go there because I didn't want to look, I don't know, even like I was trying in some way.
Yeah, you know? I think that's pretty common. I definitely did that too. It reminds me of that Simpsons episode where I think it was Bart was trying to learn how to play an instrument, and Homer was like, if you're not good at it, don't do it. And it was just like, don't even try, because hard work.
Yeah. Yeah, but hard work's so important.
Yeah. Well, and people, it's not, I kind of feel like if we are drawn to that, it's different if you aren't good at it, you don't like it, it has nothing to do with any of your goals or wants in life, okay, fine, forget
That's
it.
separate, yeah.
But if you want to be an astronaut but you hate math, well, maybe you should get over that or move through that, face that discomfort, right?
Yeah, for sure. So. Or if you see something natural in yourself and you realize you like it, then put a lot into it. Like that's where I think about hard work. I'm still a little bit like, it's not really, there's some things I'll really try to discipline and learn, but mostly I'm kind of like, if this just sparks something and it's kind of innate, then I can sink myself into it. Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to play an ad, and we'll be back with more Synchronicity in a moment. We are speaking with COURTNEY CARNRITE. You can find her at vividholistics.com. She is a local holistic practitioner. She's a doula. She does tarot, intuitive readings, herbalism, so many different things. You can check her out at vividholistics.com. Yeah, so tomorrow is the first day of school in many places, and I just want to send you, if you're going back to school or whatever, like this is a time of transition. And I don't know, you've done a lot of work on yourself, COURTNEY. What do you think about times of transition? We just have a few minutes left in the show too.
I guess I would just I'm like an altar person. I would put up a little altar for flow, for my goals. So water, maybe some ground if you want to ground into the new space that you're at. Water for kind of realizing your dreams, something that maybe you write down your goals or you put up something that represents it, and that's what I would do, and I'd put it in the east and support change and newness and plant my seeds.
Cool.
I really want to thank you, Marie, for having me. It was really off the cuff. We just pulled this together, and I just have really enjoyed our conversation, our connection, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I look forward to hearing about how your new business and the show unfolds. You do tarot. Are you still doing tarot in Granville Island?
Yeah, at the Tarot Room. I'm there every Sunday for the most part, and some other days, but at the Tarot Room.
Cool.
And you can contact me at vividholistics@gmail.com if you'd like a reading, or even just to talk about maybe your experiences that might be similar. I am starting to set up a group on Sunday evenings for people who have psychic experiences they don't understand, they don't want to talk about, they're afraid to share, but it's a really nice, safe forum to come in and be like, this happens to me. let's kind of dialogue about it, and maybe I can support people and kind of moving forward and trusting themselves.
Awesome.
Yeah. So shoot off an email with your email and let me know you want to be a part of it, and I will definitely bring you into that little loop.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Courtney, I just want to thank you so much for your willingness to talk about your experience, and because I'm sure that many people, whether there's any kind of diagnosis or anything, many people that are having experiences that are not commonly spoken about, there's a lot of fear around that and discomfort. And so thank you for your willingness to
and
be
you
bold.
too. Yeah, I mean, we both, I think, got pretty vulnerable there.
Yeah. I'm here with like tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for being able to sit with that, and I really appreciate that. Have you heard about this eye gazing thing that's going
to fall
on?
in love.
Yeah. Well, there's hi, Chris Horrific's coming in for the next show.
Hi.
Parts Unknown is coming up in just a minute here on CITR. But he's doing this thing where people, I think it's going to be a group of 10 or 15 people sitting, being willing to, anyone who is passing by wants to come. And it's almost like the free hugs thing. But this is, so for 1 minute, you gaze into the eyes of a stranger. There's not the questions, and like the falling in love thing in the New York Times was.
Yeah, I think that was 8 minutes. No,
was it? I think it was 4 minutes,
Okay.
and there were all these questions and all that.
Yeah, for sure.
But this one is just an attempt. My understanding of it is its attempt to increase the level of human connection, because we're so starved right now for connection. I think that's why our addiction to things is such at an all-time high, whether that's drugs or Gucci bags or my freaking iPhone. I'm so addicted to my iPhone. So if you're interested in that, you can go to facebook.com/connected eyes if you're in Vancouver. But Google, because I'll try and post it up on mariebenard.com, a link to the video on YouTube, because it shows the experience. And I think it would be a really fun thing to participate in. I'm working that day, unfortunately, but
very vulnerable, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
Very heart-opening and...
Yeah, and I think especially for the people passing by, because the people who are there, they kind of know what they're getting themselves into.
Absolutely.
But if you're willing to sit down and just like on the spur of the moment do that, wow.
Yeah, the windows of the soul.
Yeah. Awesome. But it's a good exercise if you just want to have like better presence and charisma and all of that, is being able to look in someone's eyes and connect with them. So yeah, consider that if you're looking for something to do on Saturday, September 25th. We got to get going. Parts Unknown is coming up. Courtney, is there anything else? VividHolistic.com?
Yeah, holistics, actually. VividHolistics.com. There's a contact page, and you can check it out for sure, but it is about to kind of be reworked. But the info and the contact is going to remain the same. So, yeah, or vividholistics@gmail.com.
Awesome.
It's really a working email.
And is there anything that you want to add before we say goodbye?
Not so much. I'm just really thankful, and yeah, this was a lot of fun.
I'm so glad you were able to come, and I'm so glad you were able to find us. So
yeah, thank goodness for Google Maps. I don't know what I'd do without my smartphone. Yay. I know people hate them, but I love mine.
I also love mine. Yes, yeah. Too much.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Courtney Carnrite from VividHolistics.com. Thanks to DJ Chris Horrific, who's going to be up with Parts Unknown in a moment. And happy transition into fall. Happy starting school, new jobs. People are taking on new stuff these days. And I just wish you well with that. And I want to send you lots of love and remind you that I love you so much. Be well. Namaste.